County Library. I'm Debbie Tripp, co-chair of the Know It to Grow It Committee with Summer Summers. And Garland County Master Gardeners is pleased to have today for our speaker, Mary Ann Jarvis. Mary Ann is one of our own Master Gardeners. She's been one since 2010, so she's got one more year and then she'll be a lifetime. And she's originally from Indiana and is going to talk about growing and using, and we even get to have taste tests. So please welcome our local herbal expert, Mary Ann Jarvis.
I know that I'm an expert, but I sure do like herbs and I grow a lot. How many of you grow herbs? Okay, so I'm speaking to my people. This is good. I'll go through a quick lesson of how to grow herbs for a few of you that don't grow them. They like a lot of sun. You don't have to water them a whole lot once they're established in the ground, but use your head on that because, you know, we didn't get rain for 2 months here, so you do have to give them some. They do grow in poor soil, but I found a couple years ago that my little herb garden, 3 feet by about 20 feet, 16 to 20 feet, it probably had absolutely no nutrition. And I couldn't figure out why nothing was growing except for chives. So I guess you don't have to give chives anything. But I went through that garden at the suggestion of Debbie, and I gave it a little bit of fertilizer. They have herbal fertilizer. I brought in some compost from Shady Grove. I put a drip hose in that area so that it got a little bit more water than I was probably giving it, and it did real well this year. So you do have to keep your soil happy. If you see worms in your soil, you've got some pretty good soil. So
Not jumping ones.
But we don't have jumping worms
Oh,
here
yes,
yet.
we do.
Oh, no. Okay, I didn't think they got to us yet. So yeah, I just have the nice red wigglers in my yard. Luckily, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, when I first moved here, I had a fishing friend, and he had ordered some red wigglers, and he ordered too many for what he wanted, his purpose, fishing. And he said, would you like the rest of these red wigglers? I have about 1,000 of them. So I'm thinking red worm, you know, nice size red worm. Oh no, he gives me this little cup and it's got these little teeny tiny little worms. So sparingly, I went through my garden sprinkling the worms in, and they were pretty happy in there. And my garden's pretty happy because of it too. So worm castings are also very good for your garden. So pick stacked, and why I don't know. Maybe they weren't as popular as they are now. But I put onions in my rose garden to keep the aphids away. So, you know, you might want to check that on Google and see if there's something special in the herb family that might keep them away. I do know that even if you are drying some herbs and you put some of those dry herbs on the shelves in your pantry, it keeps bugs away, ants and things like that away. So there are things that you can do for our pesky little pests. But usually things don't eat herbs. The rabbits, the deer, that was one of my favorite things. I have a lot of deer in the village, And they are not my friends. They're very cute, but I would like a shotgun, but we're not allowed to shoot in the village here. Although I have heard guns go off, and I'd like to know who those people are so I can contact them. But I've gotten to the point now with my garden that I can pretty much, I have deer resistant, let's put it that way. Deer resistant. I don't have too many problems with deer. Okay, now I'll know how to grow deer. You can cut, how to grow deer, how to grow herbs. You can cut on your herbs all the time, and actually the more you cut on them, the better it is and the faster the plant will grow. If you even notice that with an annual basil that you would put in, if you cut it as soon as you put it in the ground, I know it sounds terrible, don't make the faces at me, but if you cut it, it will bush out more.
Don't you need to leave some
Yeah, you
leaves?
need to leave some leaves. You can't cut it down to the ground. Although I have thought that my basil this year had it, so I cut it down to the ground. And I have these beautiful little globes of basil. Well, I didn't check this morning because of the weather. But I had these beautiful little globes of basil growing again because they were happy we've gotten all this rain and the weather's been cool at night and warm during the day. So some things will come back like that. Your perennial herbs, you should be careful with chopping too low, too late. Our frost date here in Arkansas is November 15th, thereabouts, and our heavy frost date, I'm talking heavy frost. And, that will kill everything back. And if you cut on your perennial herbs, it could kill them because they have open tips to them where you cut. It doesn't hurt one or two if you're snipping on a daily basis to use, but be careful when you chop them back when you're drying, if that is not too late in the season. I want to make sure I'm staying on track here. Oh yes, you can dry herbs for use. I spread them out all over my counters. I put them on cookie sheets in the oven with just the light on. In the summertime, if you've come to any of my talks before, you know that I put them on cookie sheets. So if you see a car in Dillard's parking lot that has cookie sheets with herbs on it, that's probably me. Because it gets to be 120 degrees in your car and it makes your car smell very nice. And then you get home and your herbs are dry. And you have a new outfit. It's all good. You can also freeze herbs. I freeze them in ice cube trays. Younger people, you know what ice cube trays are. Well, I gave this talk one time and the whole audience kind of looked at me strange and I went, oh my gosh, they don't know what an ice cube tray is. So I'm glad you do now. I know that ice makers have been around for a long time, but so have I, so I forgot when they came. So you can I put about 2 tablespoons of cut up fresh herbs in each cell of the ice cube tray and I freeze them. And then when they're frozen, I pop them out and put them in a Ziploc baggie. Make sure you mark that baggie because I'm telling you, all green looks the same. So you will mix up whatever it is that you've thrown in your freezer or you'll forget about it. But that's the way to freeze it. Let me see another way to, you can use them fresh. If you're going to use them within a couple day period of time, just put them in a little glass of water on your counter near your stove and those you'd be using in a couple days time. You can wash them off real good and pat them dry and roll them in a paper towel and stick them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the fridge and they'll last for about a week. So you're good there too. But we're going to talk about using dried herbs today. So it's the dried you should be concerned about. If you do buy herbs, if you don't grow herbs and you buy them from the store, yes, those herbs are just as good. Herbs usually last a year. Fresh, after that period of time, they'll kind of lose their potency or their taste. So I try to use them as soon as possible. But sometimes I mix a great big container of my Italian seasoning or whatever it is I'm making. I make a Thanksgiving mix that's really nice too. And I'll be talking about some of those recipes in a little bit. So we're going to talk about flavored vinegars. And most of you are going to say, what would I use a flavored vinegar for? Well, they're really good in salad dressings. So instead of just putting vinegar and oil, if you used a flavored vinegar and oil, a little bit of salt, pepper, garlic if you like it, hot pepper flakes if you like that, you can cover a salad with it. and that's a good way to use the flavored vinegars. But the way I use them mostly is in marinades. Now you can use a flavored vinegar as a marinade and just put that over the meat that you're marinating, or you can make a marinade. I'll have these recipes out so that you can take pictures with your phone, but I'll run through what's in them. If you're marinating chicken, use 3/4 of a cup of oil, your favorite kind of oil. I tend towards the avocado, pecan, those kinds of oils, but you can use vegetable oil also. 1/4 of a cup of soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, and your flavored vinegar. That's 1/4 of a cup each. And then 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and 1 tablespoon of dried mustard, salt and pepper, and a little bit of parsley. And put that in a Ziploc baggie and put your chicken in there and just let it marinate. You can marinate for at least an hour, or overnight is really best because then it soaks into the meat. And it almost kind of cooks the chicken. I mean, it's almost a different color when you take it out of the marinade, and it cooks really fast. And it's so tender. So that's a great marinade for chicken. A pork marinade, you can use 1/2 cup of soy sauce, 1/2 cup of flavored vinegar, mustard seed, ginger, and thyme can go into that, a little bit of each. I have a couple little notes on here. And 2 cloves of garlic, and you can pour that over your pork roast or pork chops or anything like that. And I suggest always, even a small pork loin, I marinate those things overnight. I mean, it's pretty easy to mix up the marinade, even if you don't like to cook. I understand there's some people that aren't cooking crazy. Here. The beef marinade I use is 1 tablespoon each of salt, pepper, garlic salt, Italian seasoning, and honey. And then 4 ounces of flavored vinegar, soy sauce, teriyaki sauce, and Worcestershire sauce. And I put that over the meat, and again, let it sit for at least an hour or overnight.
Can you marinate tofu?
You can marinate tofu, yes. And tofu takes on the flavor of whatever seasoning you put in it and whatever you cook with it. So if you're doing a chicken type dish, it'll taste like chicken, or if you're doing beef, it'll taste like beef. This lady happens to be a vegetarian, so that's why she asked about tofu. And that's why tofu is so good, especially the firm tofu. It takes on the flavor of whatever it is you're cooking. So if you're doing stir fry or something like that. Okay, now I have a special vinegar that I've made here. And this is jalapenos and peaches, and there's a clove of garlic. And I love this all by itself to be on a pork roast or pork chops. It's absolutely delicious. Mine is not hot because I take the veins and the, the seeds, out of the jalapeno. I like spicy things, but I don't like them so hot that you can hardly stand it. So if you're interested, be very careful. Don't spill on yourself. You can open that up and smell it, but that's just a couple days old. When you make a vinegar, leave it set for 30 days in a kind of dark place where the sunlight doesn't hit it. I can tuck it back on my counter, or I can put it in my pantry, or I would say I could put it in my spice cabinet, but there's never any room in the spice cabinet. I use a lot of herbs and spices because I grow them. But that is one of my favorites. And I didn't think it would because of the jalapeno, but it's not hot. Believe me, it's not hot. And if I made a salad to go with the pork that I was preparing, I would use that same and make a dressing out of it. Maybe put a little Dijon mustard in it. Let's see if I have. Might have nice.
What kind of vinegar did you put?
I put white distilled vinegar in this. My favorite vinegar to use is the champagne vinegar. But when I'm making a big container like that, that takes a big bottle of champagne vinegar. So, you know, by the time everything melts in together, you're not going to taste much of a difference. I've used apple cider vinegar, and in the apple cider vinegar, I like to put apples. You can also add more herbs into this. I think parsley would be a nice touch because that kind of gives it that fresh March 1st, if you want to have that little fresh taste in there. But this is a really nice one, jalapeno. I'll tell you about a vinegar dressing. I mentioned that you can make a simple vinegar and oil, but into 1/4 of a cup of vinegar and 3/4 of a cup of oil, you can also add a tablespoon of your favorite mustard. If you use something like Dijon, that's going to be a little bit of a lighter flavor. If you use something like a stone ground mustard, which my husband and I really like, especially if we're having a beef dish, then that gives it a little heavier of a taste. And then, of course, salt, pepper to taste. And you can just, it says to emulsify it. So you can use a food processor, an osterizer, one of those hand blenders, or you can just put it in a jar like this and just shake it. You just have to shake it vigorously until it gets to be sort of a creamy color, a little bit cloudy. Are you smelling all the good stuff in there? So any kind of a simple vinegar dressing, like I said, I'm going to put these out so you can take pictures of them and grab the recipes off of them. Do you have any questions on what else to use marinades or flavored vinegars, or how to use them, or what to put in them? You can, yes.
When you make a herb vinegar, how long do they keep?
They'll keep for a really, really long time. When you make flavored oils, that's where you have to be careful they go rancid. So my suggestion on the oils, if you want to get into that, make them for immediate use within just a couple days' time. I like to make, I'll stir it in a pan if I'm making a flavored oil. And I'll put my oil in a shallow pan, fry pan, and then I'll add in whatever herbs I want, salt and pepper, and I'll put it real, real low and let it kind of cook a little bit. And that way you can use it right away. You can use the amount if there's a little bit left over, but be real careful with the oils because they do go rancid. And I know you can buy flavored oils on the market, and they're probably just wonderful, but they also have preservatives in it. So if you're into that kind of thing, if it doesn't worry you, go with it. Okay, we are going to talk about different seasoning mixes. And I make my own Italian seasoning mix. Now, what happens in the flavorings that I'm going to pass around to you today, we're going to talk about making flavored mustards, flavored butters, and flavored aiolis. And an aioli is just mayonnaise with any kind of herbs in it or any kind of flavoring in it. So they just gave it a fancy name and it sounds pretty. So I'm going to pass out some of these little tastes. If you don't get on the top of this, this one says THX and IT. That means it's the Thanksgiving mix and the Italian mix. The TARR is tartar. And don't worry, if you don't get a taste of everything, you can just come up to the table afterwards, and I've got all the flavors over here and all the things you can try. If you don't want to try it on crackers, try it on a piece of sausage or something, and that would be lovely. Oh, I gave you one. I like you to taste while I'm talking, then that way you can know what I'm talking about and go, oh, I don't want to drink that. So to make your own Thanksgiving or your own herb mixes, you look at herb mixes today. Oh, wow. Yes.
I'm going to teach this.
You're welcome. Okay, so you're all trying something a little bit different. Does anybody need a napkin? More napkins? Okay, so it does make a difference when you're trying to flavor something up. So we're going to talk about Making an Italian mix. If you grow herbs in your garden,
The Thanksgiving mix is made with butter.
both of those, all of these today are made with butter. If you're not a butter person, you use margarine, it works the same way. You can also mix the same things in with the mayonnaise or make an aioli, or you can mix it in with the mustard. Now, the Italian seasoning mix that I have here is 2 tablespoons of dried basil, 2 tablespoons of dried oregano, 2 tablespoons of dried parsley, 1 tablespoon of dried rosemary, 1 tablespoon of dried thyme, 1 tablespoon of red pepper flakes. I use less because, you know, I'm from Indiana. What can I say? We don't eat hot. And 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I use unsalted butter, so I didn't add, I did add a touch of salt. So this recipe will be out for you to copy. Now, the Italian seasoning you can use in absolutely anything. I love to use it in butter because when I make a turkey, I slather the outside and the inside of the turkey with butter, and then I bake it. So that gives it a really nice flavor to begin with. You're smiling. I love you guys. If you deep fried turkey, you can put this on the inside if you deep fried turkey. So I think that's a really good way to do it. I roll it in a pretty thing in wax paper and I let it harden in the refrigerator. That's what I use on the table for rolls and things like that. You can also make an Italian bread with it. So if you get a loaf of crusty bread and cut it in half and slather the bread with the butter, see where I'm going? My favorite way is to put a little bit of cheese on top of that sucker and pop it in the oven or in your air fryer or something like that. That perks up any meal, Thanksgiving or not. And you can do that with any other butters, of course. So that is really good. Let's see, what else do we use it for? Oh, when I'm sauteing some vegetables in a pan, like asparagus, sometimes I like to do asparagus in the oven and do the oil and salt and pepper and a little bit of Parmesan cheese on it. But I also like to just quick pan sear it, and I will do that in the flavored butters. So that's a really good thing to do with any kind of vegetables. If you like Brussels sprouts, it's especially good with Brussels sprouts. Of course, then I have to add in a little bit of bacon and a touch of bacon grease on top of the butter and salt, pepper, and an onion. But, you know, that's just me. So the Italian seasoning I gave you. Okay, this is Thanksgiving seasoning. And the measurements I gave you are for 1 pound of butter or margarine. Okay. The Thanksgiving seasoning
Is that salted butter?
you can use salted or unsalted, whatever you have in your home. If you use unsalted, you might want to add a little bit of salt too. A little bit of sea salt goes a long way, you know, and it's really tasty. You can also add pepper in it. If you're a hot pepper person, I think Debbie said she likes to put a little bit of hot pepper in everything, cayenne pepper. Knock your socks off, go with it. It's what you like. Remember, herbs are what you like. I'm just giving you basics here. Thanksgiving seasoning in 1 pound of butter is 2 tablespoons of dried parsley, dried sage, dried rosemary, and dried thyme. That's 2 tablespoons each. This is also excellent on top of a turkey, inside the turkey, on bread rolls. If you bake rolls at, I saw a perk up there. If you bake rolls and you know how you put butter on top of those baked rolls, use herbal butter to go on top of the baked rolls. They not only taste good, but they look pretty because they have a little bit of herbs sprinkled into them. And this is really good for the Thanksgiving rolls. So I think some of you had the little container that said Thanksgiving and Italian on it, and those were the 2 butters that I just talked to you about. Now, some of you tasted the sausage, and you know what? We could pass this around so you can take what you didn't have. Oh. Now, okay, sorry. I'm gonna let you guys just pass. The tarragon seasoning is in 1 pound of butter, 2 tablespoons of dried tarragon, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of pepper. And that's what was on the sausage. If you tried the sausage, and that was pretty good.
Delicious.
Okay, now the tarragon butter, my favorite way to have it, my husband's favorite way is on sausage. And a lot of times when we're entertaining, he'll make quite a bit of sausage and we put it on a charcuterie board. And then I put the tarragon mustard on the side for people to dip the sausage into. So that's a nice quick little appetizer if you're thinking of doing something like that over the holidays. My favorite way to have this, we don't do it too often, but I get the thick sliced bologna and fry it. When I was a kid, my mom would make us fried bologna sandwiches. So, but she didn't make the tarragon, the tarragon mustard. So this is very good, but you can use your, you know what I'm calling it, tarragon butter here, but it's tarragon mustard. And it's, instead of 1 pound, it's 1 cup of mustard to use seasoning. Because I made the tarragon mustard this time. But if you're interested in that, it's great on sandwiches. So that's a good way to use the tarragon mustard. Hot dogs, yes. No, it's just a little, how would you explain it, Deb? It's just a little leafy bush. A little leafy bush. Right. But I don't think there was any licorice flavor in that, did you? I didn't either. But it does, it has a little bit of a tannin smell to it even. You can buy it in the store, tarragon, in a seasoning can.
Tarragon is one of those herbs that tastes like cilantro. Some people think cilantro tastes like soap. Tarragon is one of those, I can't do it. Everybody's different.
I'm one of the ones that can't stand cilantro.
Yep.
What are we gonna do with her?
But I know in my garden, I've been working in my sage, and I go in the house, and my husband says, okay, there's no, I can't stand the smell of sage, and I love it.
I do too.
The tarragon is Artemisia, so it's like dry.
Oh.
It's a little hot here for it. But there is a Texas tarragon, that's a lot sweeter and stronger, and it's tough, and it'll take you. But it's not French tarragon. It's not the same flavor.
And I did notice that the tarragon pooped out when the hot weather hit. I did notice that in my garden. And I grew it from seed. The herbs that I grow are mostly from seed and they do pretty good. I do some winter sowing, which if we have time, I think we'll have time later. I'll go over winter sowing with you, but it's a great way to start a lot of herbs. Okay, so I went over the tarragon. Now we're going to talk about aioli and different flavors of aiolis.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Some of you have the aioli crackers. Did I put them on crackers?
Yeah.
What I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was on crackers. And I like to try different things with aioli. Now, this particular recipe had a cup of aioli, a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, not in the can, but the next step up, it looks like little shreds that you got in that big container. That's what I put in, but you can use the green can. I just happen to like those little shreds, or I like shaved parm. So, what else went in there? Mayonnaise, Parmesan cheese, salt, pepper. I think I put salt, pepper in there. I think that's all. So that's very good. But a recipe that is absolutely delicious with that same recipe is to take cabbage steaks. Have you heard about cabbage steaks? Oh, you're going to love it. If you like cabbage, my husband and I like cabbage in all forms. I'm European, so we roll cabbages, but from there on, I like anything with cabbage. You slice them into big rounds, I do 1 to 2 inches, so my second knuckle, I'll make them that thick. And then put olive oil, salt and pepper, a little bit of garlic powder on them, flip them over, do the same thing on the other side, pop them in the oven. 350, 375. It could take up to an hour to cook them because you want them to be soft enough to eat, but still have a little crunch to them. If they start to turn a little brown, don't worry about that. That part's really good too. And at the tail end, you can put the Parmesan sprinkles on. However, I had some of this aioli mixed up, and I thought, oh, I'm going to put that aioli on. And I slathered that onto the top of these Parmesan encrusted cabbage steaks. Oh, it was so good.
After they were.
After they were cooked. It probably was good even when they weren't. But, you know, I put it on before. No, I did cook the aioli. I put it in. I put it right on top. So since that turned out so good, I decided to try some Parmesan encrusted chicken. Now there's an old recipe, it's been going around for years, and you take a cup of mayonnaise, a cup of Parmesan sprinkles, or it actually was canned sprinkles, it was a Kraft recipe. You slather that on the top of chicken and put it in the oven and cook it for 45 minutes at 350. So I thought, well, this aioli the only thing added into it were the little bit of herbs or something. So I did the chicken with it, and that was really good. And my girlfriend said she tried it on pork chops the other night. She went, oh, your aioli is so good on pork chops. So that's really good. So you have to kind of experiment. I'm a cook. I love to be in the kitchen. I like to try different things. So you have to experiment a little bit with what you're doing in the kitchen. Also, I make a little ham and cheese slider, and I make an aioli with peach jam made from Arkansas peaches, I might add. So it's half of the jam and half mayonnaise mixed up. Put that on the sandwich, wrap it in tin foil, and put it in my crock pot. And I'll just leave that warm up. The cheese melts, the aioli gets into the bread. And when my girlfriends and I play cards in the afternoon, that's our lunch. So that's a very good sandwich to try. So you have to experiment a little bit. Don't be afraid to get in there and do some things.
What different herbs have you used in the aioli?
In the aiolis, I usually keep it real simple because I don't want to take away from the aioli itself. I like to do the cheese in it. I like to do any cheeses in it. I like to do the jams in it. But I also mix my Thanksgiving mix in the aioli because you can use that on different things that you're cooking. The day after Thanksgiving, when you have the leftover dressing and all of that kind of stuff, I take the aioli and I just put a very light coating on the top of the casserole that I've made with leftover dressing, leftover turkey, cranberry sauce. I mix all of that together. I know you're looking at me like, what is she doing? And then I put that little bit of aioli over the top of it, and with the Thanksgiving mix in the aioli, and I pop that in the oven, and it's absolutely delicious. So it's a nice way to use leftovers. And you can do that with ham. Aiolis are really good with ham and pork and things like that. So, but I keep the herbs kind of simple on the aiolis. Do we have questions?
Is that what it's called?
Aioli. Whenever you put an herb or you mix something into mayonnaise, the fancy name they've given it is aioli. Aioli.
But you don't buy it in the grocery store.
You won't find it in the grocery store. And Google anything. You can pull up tons of recipes. You'll find very delicious things. I mix a lot of my vinegars into doing, like if I cut up cucumbers to make a cucumber salad, I will take one of my flavored vinegars and use that instead of just vinegar and oil in it. That adds a little pop to it. Salad dressings, like I said, I use plain vinegar and oil or flavored vinegar and oil on the salad, but I also add the mustards in, just a little bit of mustard, and then I cream it up real good and throw that over the top of the salad. That's really good. And an easy way, like if it's your turn to bring a salad somewhere, put it in one of those great big Ziploc baggies, and when you get to that person's house, throw your dressing in on top of it, shake that bag up, and you don't have to worry about tossing, and then pour it into your serving dish. And that makes it a lot easier. Do you have more questions?
Do you use cinnamon with meats?
I haven't because I don't care for that flavor. That
Haven't
doesn't.
tried it.
No, I have tried it. As a matter of fact, we had a Greek restaurant back home, and they put cinnamon in a lot of their, like, meatloafs and a lot of their things. I don't care for that flavor. That's more of a Mediterranean, East Indian.
Mid-Eastern Indian,
Yeah,
that's,
and
yeah.
that,
Indian food is largely vegetarian, so I've learned to I use a lot of cinnamon, and a lot of things.
I like Indian food, but I just don't care for that mixed in with my meat. So it's all personal, it's all subjective. Doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's different. What kind of foods do you like to cook? What kind of things do you like to make and eat? Why are you here today? No, tell me, why are you here today? We can talk about those things and discuss what kind of things can you make better because of herbs. Herbs are good because of, if you have high blood pressure, using herbs are really good for you. If you have diabetes, using herbs are really good because you're taking away the sugars that you were previously using. You're taking away salts that you were previously using. You just have to know how to use them and just try different tastes. Maybe 2 tablespoons to me isn't enough to you. Maybe a teaspoon of salt is way too much for you, but for you, it's just perfect. So, it's all subjective. Taste as you go along. And half the thing of cooking is taste as you go along. Did you have a question?
When you said crafts or were you talking about like breads and stuff, or were you talking about like non-edible markets?
I was talking about non-edibles because a lot of people are into aromatherapy and that sort of thing, but making breads, oh my goodness, using some of these herbal mixes in your breads, if you're into that, is absolutely wonderful. And usually when people bake bread, they're putting butter on top of it. Sometimes they put lard. Hank's grandma used to put lard on top of some of her things. Well, mix those herbs in with whatever you're putting on top, and it just adds a little bit more flavor. It just kind of ups the game a little bit on the food.
Would you ever put herbs directly into like flour of bread?
Yeah, I would do that. I'm not afraid to try that. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was thinking pancakes. I was trying to make a savory pancake one time. I'm diabetic, so I was trying to come up with something a little bit different that I could use for bread, sandwich or something like that. And I left the sweetness out of the pancakes. I made them with cottage cheese, and I put herbs in it so that it had a more savory flavor, and it wasn't too bad. I did, however, find out that they have a little waffle maker, and it's about the size of a hamburger bun, a big hamburger bun. So I started making what diabetics call chaffles. It's made with cheese and a little bit of almond flour and an egg. And I put herbs into that so I could use it as a hamburger bun. Oh, I thought I died on the heaven. And the cheese is already there, so I didn't even need to add cheese onto the hamburgers. So, I was pretty good with that. It was good with ham and cheese sandwiches also. Yeah.
What would a good mix of herbs that you would mix into that?
A chaffle. I would put, I like the taste of tarragon, so I would use that. Like she said, some people don't care for tarragon. I think in that chaffle that I made, I did oregano, and I had some basil, and I had some rosemary. My mistake with my rosemary is I hadn't used my mortise and pestle to grind it up, so it was a little, still a little stick that was dry. And I should have probably, ground it up a little bit and used that. But the rosemary is good in bread, period. And that's really good on steaks too. If you're making a herb encrusted steak, rosemary is excellent for that.
What do you put on fish?
What do I put on fish? Oh, lemon thyme. I use any of the citrus, even lemon mint. I have gone so far as to use lemon mint on the fish. And on asparagus, that's really good. I like to use any kind of herbal butters when I'm doing veggies. Even if I pop them in the microwave to cook them, I toss them with some flavored butter. There's usually a flavored butter in my refrigerator at any given time. My husband may not know what it is because he'll go, what is this? I just roll it. I take it when it's kind of soft and I roll it up. Sometimes the butter is so hard you can't mix things into it, so I add a little bit of oil into it, pecan oil, avocado oil, whatever you use, and I mix that into it to give it just a little bit of working room. And I roll it up into wax paper and then keep it tidy, put it in the fridge, and then you can unroll it and put it in your butter dish. And it's a pretty presentation. I don't have any butter. Some people have the presses and stuff like that. I'm not that fancy. I'm just regular.
What about salmon?
Oh, salmon. I like to use, I have a salmon rub that I use. And I'm sorry I didn't bring that recipe. Let me think for a second. I'm sure it's got salt and pepper and thyme, and I know it's got a touch of brown sugar in it, and I will rub that over the salmon. I'm sorry, I can't remember that recipe, but I'll put that on the salmon as a rub to cook it, and then I top it off with homemade pepper jelly just before it's done, and let it melt over the top. And like I said, I'm a northern girl, so I don't like the hot. So my pepper jelly is probably a little calmer than what someone here might make, a southern person might make, but it's still very good. So salmon is really good that way.
I know that it's good to cook with like fresh herbs. When you're making like the butters or the aiolis in advance, is it always better to do dried herbs?
Yeah.
than that, rather
It
than-
is, otherwise but the herbs might get a funny taste to it, plus they're limp. So it's always better to use the dried because they'll soak up some of the moisture within whatever you're making, the mustard, the aioli, or, the butter. So yeah, it's always better to use the dried when you're doing something like that. Fresh herbs are always good to use. My recommendation on that is when you're cooking with fresh herbs, put them in last. For some reason, fresh herbs, to me, just my opinion, they kind of lose their flavor. But if I use the dried herbs and it's cooking, if I'm using even the Instapot, thank you younger people for introducing me to an Instapot. What have I done before life? But that's a very good thing to do. This young man was talking about making breads with it, and I would think breads and rolls alike would be great with any kind of herbs in them. And then topping it off or having a flavored butter on the side to serve with it. Like sometimes you go to a restaurant and they have honey butter. That's good and it's really nice and it's sweet, it's good. I can't have that much sweet, so I always go with the savory and I try to bump it up.
What do you recommend when you're going from growing your own herbs to preparing them to be dried to add to these ingredients? What's the best process to use in drying?
In drying. I think the fastest for me is in the oven with the light on. The oven doesn't have to be hot. And one of the master gardeners used to be with us. She taught me to do lemongrass. And she would cut a handful of lemongrass and then roll it around her hand and then tie it. And we could get 6 of them on a cookie sheet and stick them in the oven with the light on. And by the next day, they were dried. So I find that if I don't put too many in the cookie sheet, if I just do the bottom, it can be a little bit more than a single layer, but do it like that, they dry almost overnight. The tougher ones to dry are rosemary. Rosemary is a bigger plant. It takes a little bit longer. I do have a dehydrator from my hippie days. Yes, I was a hippie. Weren't we all? So I still have that dehydrator. They made things a lot better back then. So I do use that, but it only has 7 trays in it. And when I dry, if you've seen my garden and you girls that are master gardeners, you know me. I do a lot of herbs. I give herbs away as gifts, which you're going to be getting. And, so I like to dry multitudes. Drying in the car when I could put 7 cookie sheets in the car. Hey, I knew you always laugh at me when I say that, but it doesn't work. It really doesn't.
Well, earlier you talked about after they dry freezing them and putting them in the ice tray.
You don't have to dry them and freeze them.
Okay.
Freezing them was just another way of preserving them.
Oh, when it's fresh.
When it's fresh.
Well, you add water, right?
Yeah.
And, yeah. And
I fill up the tray. I usually put 2 tablespoons in, then I know what I've got in there. And then it's nice if I'm making a dip, that little bit of water that's in there, it's not going to screw up your taco dip. Believe me, I've done it. It's going to be just fine.
Mhm.
So you can put your cilantro in there. I try to cut them up as if I were going to use them. So I use my scissors to cut them up to put them in the cells of the tray. I do the same thing with if I'm making a mix that I can throw into a soup or a stew or something like that. And then I just pop a couple ice ice cubes in whatever it is I'm making. And I even pop an ice cube or two of different herbs in the Instapot when I'm cooking in there. I put them in frozen, and of course, they melt right away. So that's a really good way to use them. Yes.
Does the season ever dictate your choice of like blends of herbs?
It probably would for some people, but since I grow and dry so many herbs, I use as I go. This year was a new for me. I tried growing fennel because I'm European and part of me is Romanian and we like fennel. And I like the fennel seeds. It reminds me of sausage because most of the Romanian sausages my grandparents made had fennel in them. A lot of sausages do. So I like to put fennel in different soups and stews that I make. So fennel is a good thing. I like the fennel bulb to make a fennel and granny apple salad with. And it has a vinegar dressing on it. And that's really good if you like fennel. You have to like fennel.
I am hoping to learn about fennel. What is the flavor? And if you buy fennel seeds, do they need to be ground?
They don't have to be ground if you're using them. Fennel is easy to grow by seed because I have grown it. That was what I did this year, I grew it by seed. And I was amazed at how many fennel seeds I got. I got a whole jar of fennel seeds from, just a few little plants that I.
What is the flavor of it? What does it go with?
Anise? Yeah, I would say, but to me, it's very light. It's a light anise. So I don't know, how does it taste to you girls?
Yeah.
Yeah, light. It's a very light, very similar to the tarragon. If you smell it, to me, it smells like my grandma's kitchen. So I guess that doesn't help you guys at all. But that flavor, and when I had run across this apple anise salad recipe, I thought, I definitely have to try that. My husband did not care for it. He's a Southern boy. His parents were from Kentucky, so that didn't appeal to him at all. I still make it.
Well, the fennel plant is so big and beautiful. That's how I got into it. So many of the herbs are such pretty plants.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if I'm going to grow them, I might as well start tasting some of them.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty plants.
Yeah.
And they're hardy plants.
And if you don't like them, I have different, I must have 15 different kinds of thyme in my yard. If you've ever been in my yard, I have it as ground cover. It's growing in my front yard in 4 different places. Now, two of the thymes are the itty bitty. One of them is an elfin thyme and the other one is a silver woolly thyme. And they're ornamentals. I suppose you could eat them if you wanted to, but there's not much there. They're just so teeny tiny, but they make a beautiful ground cover. I have shorter versions of thyme all over the place in my yard to use as ground covers. Herbs absolutely love this area. They love heat. We have a lot of moisture in the air. That's probably why they don't need to be watered quite as often as other things do. Just keep in mind, you do have to water them periodically, especially when we get that crazy no rain weather for 2 months like we had this year. I noticed a lot of drooping going on in that garden, so I had to water.
Yes, I had a $360 some water bill this month.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. We won't discuss. Because now we're getting beautiful rain and I haven't had water for a month and a half now, so I'm a happy camper because sometimes this time of year, November, we usually do get rain, but sometimes this time of year can be dry too. Okay, what are you recently going to make for a dinner party or a holiday party or something? What do you want to know what you can put herbs in? Potatoes, mashed potatoes. Don't forget about putting that flavored butter in the mashed potatoes. Who wouldn't enjoy that? And they look pretty. Did you know you can mash sweet potatoes and mash regular white potatoes and mix them together? Oh, does that look pretty? And it's very good. It's kind of like one of those margaritas, the strawberry lime. Yeah, it would be very nice. I don't know if you like Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are very good. That's kind of a nice dish to make. Some people don't care for Brussels sprouts. I understand. It tastes like cabbage to me. What kind of herbs do you add to your Brussels sprouts? I usually keep it simple on that because I like to add in, I like to use a butter, a flavored butter. So that would probably either be Italian or the Thanksgiving mix that I put in there. Those are pretty simple herbs and all of that that nobody would have any objection to. But I also like to add a little bit of bacon grease into that and an onion. I saute an onion, then I take some bacon and put it into that, the Brussels sprouts, and cut it in half and saute with that. They're very good. They're fattening, but they taste mighty fine. And the same thing for green beans. If you love fresh green beans, I don't like green beans cooked to mush. I like them to be al dente. So I'll take fresh green beans and snip off the ends, and I'll do that same recipe with green beans, and it's really good. To me, it's better than the one with the mushroom soup and the onions.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
Well, you know, that was an old standby for many years.
That's true. It was.
Okay, so what else are you making? You're making bread, which sounds delicious.
I was asking more about non-consumable herb products. I guess anything you do that you don't eat.
And those would be the crafts, and I'm not a big herbal crafter. Debbie, are you an herbal crafter?
No, I'm more the medicinal.
You're the medicinal.
One of my favorite things to do is like, you have some like sewing skills, material, and so, however long of a length of fabric you want, and like a square, and leave one end open and put rice with dried herbs, whatever scent you want, mix that together, and then you sew up that one end, and then it makes a really good heating pad. Like you just take the microwave for a few minutes or whatever, and then, it's great for like iPad, like just to soothe your eyes at night, or like you can make it long enough. Like sometimes you can take old socks that we don't use anymore, or kids have outgrown or whatever, and it makes a great neck wrap. But that's a way to use herbs and crafts like that, and it's really good. It's great for making gifts for Christmas because everybody loves those little heating pads.
I have made the rice bags and never thought to put herbs in it. Of course, why not? Another herb that would be great to put in it would be the flowers of lavender. And put that, and that's a great sleepy time sort of thing to do.
Anymore, but I used to teach this class. We would do bath salts with herbs, we do oil with herbs, we do soap with herbs, and we would do potpourri. I mean, all that kind of stuff. I don't do it anymore.
Yes, we made bath bombs and put the herbs in. The only thing is when it melts down in the tub, then you have all that stuff. Then you have to take showers.
Yeah.
I have a shower first.
You can take a little bit of cheesecloth, and wrap some herbs in that cheesecloth, and drop that in the bath. That way, it's easier to clean, easier to get out. It's all in the tub, but you still get that fusion of the herbs in the bath.
Very cool. That's a great idea.
She say cheese ball.
Cheesecloth. Cheese wrap. Like you would, like you would for a garnier. If you make a with a little cheese
You're
bag.
thinking these carnivores are crazy.
Okay, does anybody want to hear about winter sewing? I'm going to throw that in.
Yes.
Okay, winter sewing is so much fun. I started it 3 years ago, and I knew nothing about it, and I only watch YouTube. And you can watch anything you want, good or bad. And I was surfing the net, and I found this lady throwing in milk jugs. Okay, so I live in the village, and nobody drinks a gallon of milk there, but they all have CPAP machines, so I have plenty of gallon water. Okay, you go with so I asked the people I knew to save me the water jugs from their CPAP machines, and what you do is, after you've done laughing, you take these jugs and you cut them open so that where the handle is on the milk jug, the water jug, it folds back. So now you have a little container, okay? In the bottom of the container, you're going to drill a whole bunch of holes so that it will drain. And you're going to take the cap off and recycle it. Notice how I did that, recycle, not throw it away. Okay, so now you have your container where you're going to grow whatever it is you're going to grow. Make sure that the things you want to grow need to be cold. Something like basil. Basil will not grow over winter. These are like little greenhouses that we're making. And basil will not grow. It's cold stratified is the word I'm looking for. You'll usually see that on the seed packet. So anything that is cold stratified. Anything you see out in your garden that you think won't grow again or won't spread, like say coneflowers, keep some of those seed heads if you want to spread them to another part of your garden, and you can, they like to be cold stratified so you can grow them, okay? So anything that's cold stratified. When you're buying seeds, wherever you buy them from, Johnny's Seeds, wherever, there are 100 different places to buy seeds from, or pick them up at a big box store or anything. It usually will say on the package cold stratified, and if it doesn't have those two words on it, take your phone and look it up and see if it's cold stratified. It needs to be cold stratified. That means you can grow it in the wintertime. January 1st, when hubby's watching the football game. Sorry, you guys. January 2nd. You don't have to have seed growing mix. You can put regular container mix into these jugs. Fill it up almost to the top of that bottom part that you got open. And then plant your seeds in there, sprinkle them around, and mark up. Mark up inside and mark up outside. Get a good garden pen or something that's not going to wash off. The inside you don't have to worry about so much. Make sure you water it. You've marked it. You've planted your seeds. Now you're going to close that lid and you're going to tape it. Here's where duct tape comes in handy. Really handy. I always wondered why my husband had 37 rolls of duct tape. I now know I can put it color coded. So you close that up and mark it on the outside too if you have availability of something that won't wash off. And then it's already been watered. Put it in a sunny spot, lined by a garden, out in your veggie garden, wherever you want to put it. It is open to the elements on the top that will water it. Got holes in the bottom where it will drain. I've never had to rewater any of mine. I've been lucky enough that from January 1st till spring that they have gotten enough water. However, if you peek in that little top hole and you notice that they look kind of dry, then, you know, put a little bit of water in there so they have a little bit of water to grow. They won't germinate right away, but when they do, they'll start growing fast and looking out the top of that pot. And that's when it's time to plant them out in the garden. So I did, the first year I did 7 jugs because I didn't know how this was going to work. It worked so well. Last year I did 21. So I had roots coming out of my ears. I had new kinds of flowers coming out of my ears, and it was a whole lot of fun. So this year I have a flower called Bells of Ireland. Have you ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be too humid here for it, but I don't care. I'm going to try it. You never know. So if they even grow in spring, they should be absolutely gorgeous. So that will be new on my list with all of my herbs. So it's a real simple way. If you don't have a greenhouse, I have a small cold frame, so I don't have a space for a whole lot. But those jugs, they just saved my life, and they give me something to do over winter. You know, and then you go out and keep peeking and seeing if they're good, and then all of a sudden you see little babies in the bottom, and then pretty soon they'll start shooting out the top in spring when it starts warming up. Probably around end of March, beginning of April, they'll be all ready to plant. It'll be very good, yes.
And if you wait to the end of January, you can do basil.
Oh,
It's
end
not
of January.
stratified.
Oh, good. Debbie knows this because she has a farm. Excuse me. You had a question?
How many seeds would you plant?
Well, you know, my first year I went kind of dumb and I put a whole pack. We don't need to do that. Not do what I did. But I would take a, you know, not a whole handful, but a good sprinkle. A good sprinkle, I would say. Because they may not all germinate, but pretty much all of them will. So, and especially if your seeds are not old and they're cold stratified seeds, make sure they're cold stratified.
If you have real tiny seeds, I saw take a salt shaker, a pepper shaker, and that will bring, you can do little tiny seeds, like seeds in that.
Do you put something else in the salt shaker?
No, just the seed itself. You can use that when you're planting.
Okay.
You know how tiny some
Yeah,
are.
those little
But that,
poppy seeds. Poppies will grow in the cold. So poppies are a good thing to cold stratify you're interested in that, all of the herbs that I grew, except for the basil, I knew my basil died that first time.
Which pot? Like if you go to
You know, the old fashioned,
the red one, like the.
Yeah.
Yeah, the.
because you can buy poppy seeds.
Mhm.
Don't take it off the bread.
No. Yeah, no, the little packet.
It's like, I was like, don't buy it at the grocery store and try to plant it. It might work. Yeah. My problem is, I don't need a bag of garlic, I just need a couple bulbs, and that's what my problem with garlic.
So what are some of the herbs that you've done with the winter stuff you've had success?
Oh my gosh, thyme. I must have had 7 different kinds of thyme that I tried growing. And I have a plant sale once a year, so I like to grow them for my plant sale. I tried to take some of my herbs out of my garden. I have a hard time with that. Well, one, I don't want to take them out of my garden. And two, I just have a hard time when I have taken like thyme out, it doesn't want to transfer real good, so I must be doing something wrong. So I'd rather grow it from seed. So thyme is a real easy one. Oregano is a real easy one. Chives are real easy. I have chives in a couple places in my garden. When they start to go to seed, I cut off the top and I keep the seeds. I have to be careful not to mix them with the rose campion seeds because they kind of look the same. Yeah, I have to make sure I mark those packages. So those would be something I grow. I'm trying to think what else is good. My basil didn't work. Oh, clarion sage. I tried clarion sage and that worked. I tried sage and that didn't work, so it's probably the same as basil. I would have to wait a little bit longer. So wait till February and do.
Yeah, end of January, early February, depends on the winter and how it's going.
Some seeds need light to germinate.
They're going to get plenty of light if they're in these
But
round
do
jugs.
you cover the seeds that you sow, you don't sprinkle dirt on?
If I do, it's a very, very fine little bit that I put over the top of them. I don't usually bury anything. I tried growing those sea holly plants. Those came up beautifully. And I put the seeds in the refrigerator for 6 weeks. And then I put some in the garden and some in the buckets that I grew. And they didn't ever come up in the garden, but they did in the buckets. So I don't know if I should have put them in the refrigerator. No, these are, what's the sea holly? No, starts with an E.
Economics.
Yeah, economics. Yeah. They're real pretty. They're like this little, but pretty.
I grew in North Dakota and they were like a weed. I mean, they came up everywhere. I had to continually pull them. But
Yeah, I would like to say that's
They
happening.
don't come back out here. I don't think the humidity, I think, is too high or something.
Well, the ones that come up are pretty, but they, they're not as prolific as I've read.
No, in North Dakota they are, so move to North Dakota.
Oh, no, thank you. I came from Indiana. That was enough snow. What other herbs can we cold strap? Parsley. Oh yeah, parsley. Cilantro. Cilantro came up good. As a matter of fact, my parsley yesterday looked so pretty. I cut a bunch of it just to bring in the house. It was just gorgeous. So it's doing well. Oh,
We're about time, I think.
You know, in Indian food, they put a sprig of parsley to freshen your breath after
Yes.
you've eaten.
that's what I heard about the Victorians too. That's why they would put parsley in places to freshen your breath after you ate. Who knew? My son called them trees. More questions?
So it is.
So it is. Yeah. Pretty. Is it? Now I want you to please, when you get done here, please, I have more of the appetizers over here if you want to try it on the meat instead of the crackers. Give it a shot, all that stuff is over here. We have some really nice history. Yes, we do.
Thank you so much. Mary Ann has brought some lovely
Herbal gifts. We have herbal gifts.